This video is about Ken Follett. Who is Ken Follett? He doesn't need me to introduce him, but if you don't know, he is a phenomenally successful author. He's written books that have been sold all over the world. How many books? 38. How many books has he sold? Well over 200 million, probably. It's always a bit of a flex whenever an interviewer asks people like Ken Follett, oh, how many books have you sold? And he says something like, oh, I don't know, but I imagine it's this amount. And usually it's many hundreds of millions. So very, very successful. When did he start? How did he get his break? What sort of books does he write? He was actually a journalist, and he was writing books on the side of being a full-time journalist when he was very young, when he was in his 20s. These books were getting some sort of recognition. They were getting published, but nothing compares to the standard that he saw with his first bestseller, which was The Eye of the Needle, which was his 11th book, and that was published in 1978. After that, he could quit his journalism job and basically be a full-time author, which is, I believe, what he then began to do. He would carry on writing espionage-related books, that sort of thing, for I think about 10 more years. But in 1989, so about 11 years after Eye of the Needle was published, he decided to take a major risk, which was to write an expansive historical fiction book called The Pillars of the Earth. His publishers didn't want him to do it. They said, stick with the espionage. He said, no, I'm going to write something different. And that's exactly what he did. And lo and behold, that became probably his most successful book to date. And I believe nearly 30 million copies of that book have been sold. So his publishers were wrong. And this video is going to be exploring how Ken Follett writes. We're going to touch a bit on his actual methodical process, because it is very methodical and quite interesting. I've never seen a process like this before, but also some bits of advice which I've seen him give when he's been interviewed by various interviewers and when he's been speaking at sort of public forums, the kind of wisdom and advice he gives, especially to aspiring writers, some of which I think is, to be honest with you, quite valuable. And if anyone knows, it's Kenneth Follett. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, first, number one, a methodical approach. Kenneth, all right, I'm not going to call him Kenneth. Ken Follett, Ken, I say he's a very methodical sort of man, and this is definitely reflected in the way that he writes. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this. He's definitely spoken about this before, so if you really want to see the finer details, just search Ken Follett in YouTube. But let's just quickly run through it now. So he writes with 3 screens.
So this screen shows the first draft, draft A. On the right hand side are notes from various people who have seen the first draft. And you'll see here, somebody who works for me says, I was not drawn in as quickly, nor did I read it as fast as the last 2 books. So that's interesting, isn't it? That suggests that the first chapter might be a bit ponderous. This is the second draft, but what I would be doing is writing this second draft. And I key it. I don't take this and edit it and make marks on it. I take a blank sheet of paper in the middle and then I start writing the whole book again.
Which must take longer than going over the first draft and just editing it.
Well, it takes a full year.
On the left-hand side, he has the first draft of his book, at that point unpublished book. On the right-hand side, he'll then have the various comments from historians, from maybe his agent, from editors who've basically gone through that initial first draft and just left their comments on how things could be revised and improved. And in the middle screen, his third screen, this is his fresh draft. And what he does here is he starts completely from scratch. He will type out his manuscript all over again, incorporating the comments on that right-hand side screen, which he'll then, and he always says, it makes a huge difference. He'll take the comments from his editor, like I say, from his editor, maybe from his agent, from publishers. He'll then incorporate that into this fresh draft. And he says by writing it out entirely from scratch, he sees things which in his initial draft he completely missed. So a very methodical approach. He's not like a Lee Child type where he'll just make it up as he goes along and hope for the best. He's very much this is my first draft, these are the comments, and I'm starting again from scratch, and I'm going to do it all over again. So very methodical, very process driven and oriented, and I think he does a lot of research as well, especially when it comes to his historical books, which frankly, you've got to do a lot of research, haven't you, to get the history right. Number 2, press on. This is, I think, quite important, especially for writers, because I think every single writer at some point has felt this when you're writing your manuscript and frankly, you just want to give up. Why do you want to give up? Because you're writing this out, you're spending all this time, all your free time, you're not socializing, you're just writing this book, and you think to yourself, is anyone going to read this? Is there any point to this? Should I just stop? Ken says, don't stop. You've got to keep on going. You've got to press on. The feeling of doubt that you get as an author, it can be very pervasive, and it can really stop you from doing the writing and from doing the work because you simply think it's not going to be good enough. Ken says, don't worry about that. Just press on. Keep on writing. It's super important. And if Ken was like a one-hit wonder who just got lucky and won the lottery of writing and life and just wrote one book that was hugely successful and never wrote again, I'd say, you know what, Ken, I'm going to take that with a pinch of salt. However, remember, Ken wrote 10 books while he was working as a journalist full time before he got his first major success. You've got to press on, you've got to be diligent, you've got to persevere, and you've got to keep on writing. Three, emotional involvement. Be emotionally involved in the writing that you're doing. Ken was very clear on this point. He said if you're not emotionally involved in the work and you don't care about it perhaps as much as you should, your reader's not going to care either. They're not going to be invested in the work, they're not going to make it to the end of your book, and they're not going to recommend the book to their friends, are they? Because they don't care about it. If you as a writer care about the work that you're writing, it's going to be a much better book for the reader. It's all about the reader experience. If you feel bored of your book, if you feel like it's not going anywhere, and it's not just like a bad day at the office, it's something that just sticks with you over time as well, over weeks and months as you're battling with this book and you don't care about it, there's no emotional involvement, then maybe you're just writing the wrong book. Maybe it's a case of, okay, write something you do feel genuinely emotionally involved with, because that is what's going to separate the good books from the bad books and the great books that readers genuinely want to read. Number 4, be absorbed. Not just absorbed with the writing itself, be absorbed with the entire process of getting a book published. So be absorbed with the research, with the writing itself, with the plot, with the characters, with the actual publishing process itself. When it comes to liaising with agents, when it comes to the actual industry of book selling, be absorbed with all of it. I think what I've noticed, especially with the really hugely successful writers, is that at least from the ones I've seen, they're just in it. They are in it completely. They're totally immersed in their industry, in the publishing industry, in the industry of books and being an author. They don't do anything else. You know, they're not like doing other things. They're not doing YouTube videos or anything like that. Granted, a lot of them, they started out when YouTube and self-publicizing wasn't as big a deal maybe, and wasn't as important. But even so, they are absorbed in the process of making books, of writing books and getting them published across the world to as wide an audience as possible. If you're a writer, if you're a budding author and you want to be successful, just be absorbed in it. And finally, this is not something that Kenneth has said, I don't believe anyway, I haven't come across him saying this, but it's something I have gleaned just from looking at the way he's operated and how successful he's been, particularly when it came to kind of breaking the mold with what he had been writing and then writing Pillars of the Earth instead. Write what you want to write. The Eye of the Needle made him hugely successful, and they wanted him to just hash out that sort of formula again and again. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. He wanted to write something different. He took that risk, and Pillars of the Earth obviously has been probably his most successful book to date. So make sure as a writer, you're writing the kind of stuff that you actually want to write. Don't try and write for a trend. Don't try and write for a certain industry. Don't try and write for a certain target audience. If you're not feeling it within your bones, You've got to write the kind of book that you enjoy yourself. That's how you create amazing work. That is how you take it to the next level, just like Ken did. So there you have it, Special K, Big Ken, Big Dog. How does he write? Well, I mean, he's spoken about this at length to many different interviewers, and he can obviously put it in his own words a lot better than I can. However, I just find this stuff interesting. I love looking at successful authors and seeing the advice that they've given over the years and trying to just not replicate it for myself necessarily, but just look into it a bit more because it's quite inspiring. And I think you can learn a lot from the people who have been there and done it. So just a quick recap, a methodical approach. If you're more of I make it up as I go along, that's okay. But Ken, he leans into that methodical approach when it comes to research, the 3-screen method, and starting his second draft completely from scratch. So if you're looking for a method, a writing process, and you haven't really quite found yours yet, give Ken's a try. You might enjoy it. That methodical approach actually can work. 2, press on. Don't give up. Keep on writing. Keep the faith. Yes, it's normal to doubt yourself, but don't let that doubt paralyze you into stopping you from doing the work. Do the work always. 3, emotional involvement. Be emotionally involved in the work that you're writing. Make sure you care about it, because if you care about it, then the reader will as well. 4, be absorbed with the entire process of book selling, not just the writing, but the plot, the characters, the research, the publishing industry, how it all works, getting a book with just an idea in your head, getting it down to paper and into the bookshops. Be obsessed and absorbed with that process. Finally, 5, write what you want to write. Don't feel like you have to cater to an audience. Don't feel like you have to cater to a trend, because this is something I've also seen writers say a lot. If you're writing for a certain trend that may just turn out to be fleeting, by the time your book's been sold, people have moved on. They're over it, all right? So write what you want to write, and don't worry too much about what the trends are. Don't worry about what is selling and what isn't selling. Just write what you want to write. That's the whole point. Authors are incredibly independent. Writers are incredibly independent. It's difficult to really get them, I think, to listen to advice anyway, but that's a good thing in many ways. That's what gives you your unique voice. That's what makes your work authentic. So lean into that. Write what you want to write. So there we go. Shout out Big K, Special K, Big Kenneth, Kenneth Follett, Ken Follett, KF. What? Oh, shut up. You get the point. Thank you, Ken, for your amazing advice. And who do you want me to speak about next? I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, like the video, subscribe to see more, and I'm going to be doing more of these as well. And let me know in the comments which authors you'd like me to speak about. All right, that's it. Ooh, coffee.
Stand tall, never gonna fall. Determination in our eyes, we'll rise above it all. Stand tall with the challenge we face. We stand proud and chase.